Your story is what makes you stand out from everybody else. I mean, you are uniquely you. Nobody else is going to be you. So if you're doing a marketing podcast and 750 other people are also doing marketing podcasts, how are you going to stand out against everybody else? What's going to make you different? Are you going to tell me how to do great marketing in 4 steps instead of 5? You have to figure out your point of differentiation, and your point of differentiation is your story. Where'd you come from? What are you all about? How did you learn this stuff? What made you who you are? Who were your important influences? That's why your story is important, because your story is unique to you. Nobody can copy your story. You can be doing the same topic, same information, but your filter, your story is unique to you, and nobody else will be able to copy that.
So you're a smart business committed to innovation, to service and to modern marketing, and you're asking, what's next? Wondering how you can become even more innovative. My name is Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and this is the InnovaBuzz podcast, where we share all kinds of tips, advice and interview guests on all things innovation and leadership in modern marketing. Hi innovators, it's great to be back with another episode. I hope you've had an awesome week so far. I'm really excited to have on the InnovaBuzz podcast as my guest today, Erik K. Johnson, the podcast talent coach. Erik has been coaching radio air talent since 1995. He's very experienced. By building relationships with audiences, he has taken multiple radio stations and radio shows to the top of the ratings. His writings teach people how to turn information into engaging entertainment and transform your podcast into meaningful, profitable relationships. And here's the thing, it's not just about your podcast, it's about any communication that you might be doing, whether it's a presentation, a speech, or content on your blog. The Podcast Talent Coach is dedicated to the art and show business of podcasting. While other companies offer services that teach the technical side of podcasting, Erik and his team provide a coaching service that deals with the personal side and the art of podcasting. Even if you aren't a podcaster, as I said, what he teaches is applicable to any content or presentation. So strap yourself in for some entertaining and very informative education. Today's podcast is brought to you by the Transformational Marketing Hub, where you'll find a host of free and exceptionally useful information to help you transform your marketing. You can access the Transformational Marketing Hub by visiting innovabuzz.co/VIP. If you don't yet have an account there, click the blue Take a Peek Inside button and see whether there's something there for you. As I said, it's free and exceptionally useful, and especially for you. In our episode today, Erik talked to me about the importance of being clear about the purpose of your podcast or any presentation, and about your target audience. We talked about learning from industries outside of your own and transferring ideas over as a way to be more innovative. And Erik told me about nearly being killed by a bear in the woods. Without further ado, then, let's fly into the hive and get the buzz from Erik K. Johnson. Hi, I'm your host, Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and I'm really excited to welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast today, all the way from Omaha, Nebraska in the USA, Erik Johnson, who's the podcast talent coach and host of the podcast with the same name. Erik's been coaching radio air talent since way back in 1995. He's built relationships with audiences, and by doing that, he's taken multiple radio stations and shows to the top of their particular ratings. His writings teach people how to turn information into engaging entertainment and transform your podcast into meaningful, profitable relationships. So welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast, Erik. It's a real privilege to have you here.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Dave Jackson, who was on episode 145 of the InnovaBuzz podcast, suggested we speak with Erik. So big hello to Dave.
Dave's one of my favorite guys. Love him.
Yeah, and we had a lot of fun talking with Dave as well. So I always enjoy the wonderful guests we have on the podcast. Now, the podcast talent coach is dedicated to the art and show of business and show business of podcasting. So I need to step back and think about what I'm saying. While many companies offer services on the technical side of podcasting, Erik, you and your team provide service focused on the personal side, the art of podcasting, the entertainment, and of course, as a podcaster. So I'm really keen to dig deeper in that and learn from you today. And I'm sure that many of my audience are interested in learning from that as well. And I know listening to some of your videos and podcasts, I think your teachings apply not just to podcasting, it applies to presentations in general and to marketing. So before we start talking about all things podcasting, entertainment, engagement, and so on, let's find out a little bit more about you as a person. So how did you get to where you are today, and what were some of the pivotal moments in that journey?
I got here completely by accident. I started out, I was getting a degree, a university degree in architecture, and that had been my passion since I was probably 12 years old. Had the entire intention of making a career in architecture. But while I was in college, I started falling out of love with architecture and started falling into love with radio. Ended up getting my first job in radio while I was in college. Ended up finishing my degree in architecture and just stayed in radio and worked my way up, and eventually becoming a program director. I started in radio in 1989. Prior to that, I was a DJ. So I had experience being on the microphone, but had never considered being on the radio. My brother had been working for a radio station. His boss called looking for him to fill in for a shift. He wasn't home. He said, "Hey, we're looking for part-time help. Would you be interested?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm a college student. I can use some extra money." I went down and got a part-time job at the radio station. And next thing you know, I'm taking some classes in it. I'm getting a full-time job in it. And 6 or 7 years later, I'm the program director of a radio station. And it's been my career ever since. And I got into podcasting because I just love the art of audio and just the pictures you can paint in the mind using fantastic stories. As I was listening to podcasts, I started to realize that many podcasters didn't know what they didn't know. And I figured if they could just learn a few of the things that I had learned over the past 25 years of radio broadcasting, their podcasts could be so much stronger and so much better. Not that they were doing it wrong, they just didn't know some of the basics and the general techniques we use in radio. So that's how I became the podcast talent coach. I'd been coaching radio talent since 1995, and I figured I could use those same tools and talents and techniques to help podcasters create even a stronger message and improve their podcast.
Yeah, that's awesome. And of course, podcasting has so many similarities with radio, doesn't it? It's kind of radio on demand.
Yeah, it's very similar to talk radio in the fact that you can dive deep into some subjects that you really want to get into. I think that's why in the United States, National Public Radio, NPR, has really blossomed in the area of podcasting because they do a lot of long form programming on NPR, and it's very conducive to just transfer that information and that entertainment into a podcast format where you could get it on demand. And they've done a great job at it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Certainly a lot of the local radio stations here, the public radio station is making enormous use of podcasting now. They're transferring, well, not transferring, but they're kind of replicating or repurposing a lot of their content in a podcast format, which is, really expands their audience.
Yeah, repurposing that content and being able to dig even deeper into the stories has really benefited public radio.
All right. So you did finish your college degree, though, didn't you, while you were doing all of that?
Yeah, I do have a bachelor's degree in architectural studies. It's a bachelor's of science of architectural studies, and then I went on and got a master's in business administration.
Yeah. So what did it feel like continuing your architecture studies when you came to the realization that radio was actually what you wanted to do?
It was tough finishing out the degree, but not as tough as you would think, because architecture and radio are quite similar. A lot of people think, man, how did you go from architecture to radio? They have nothing in common. When in fact, they have quite a few things in common. My personality, I'm not right brain or left brained. I'm kind of 50-50. I like to be creative, but I also like to be analytical. And I think that's why the master's in business administration also appealed to me, because in architecture as well as radio, you're provided a set of guidelines, a framework, and a structure, and then you have to go be creative within that framework. So if you're designing a building, let's say you're designing a hospital, you know the plot of land you're building on, that constraint is there. You know how many rooms it needs to have. You know the specifications of the building. So you're given a set of assumptions, and now you have to take those set of assumptions and you have to be creative and create something from nothing. And it's the same way in radio. You're given maybe 15 seconds over the ramp of a song, or if you're in talk radio, you might be given a 12-minute talk segment, and now you need to take that and keep in mind the format of the radio station and the target audience, and now you have to be creative using those parameters. And that's what I enjoy about podcasting. You're given a set of parameters, not necessarily as strict and stringent as radio or architecture, but you still have to be creative within those parameters.
Yeah, and we'll get onto some of those parameters in a moment, because you said something there around target audience that is very close to my heart in terms of a marketer, of course. And I think there are a number of parameters that a lot of people perhaps don't really give enough thought to in podcasting or in any marketing endeavor, and that doesn't set them up for optimal success. But I guess before we get to that, so I'm interested, what changes when someone engages with you?
What changes in which way?
Well, what changes for them? So if someone works, yeah,
okay. I think the biggest change, we kind of touched on it a little earlier, was that they don't know what they don't know, and so we start talking about their show, and we talk about their target audience and the framework of their show, and really the goals of their show. What do we hope? Why do you even have a podcast? What are you trying to accomplish? And when we define that, and we define our target listener, and we use that filter to create our content to really make it powerful to help us hit our goals, they step back and they go, wow, I hadn't even thought about that. I didn't even know how that worked. I didn't understand the reason behind that. And I think that's the biggest change. I'm not the guy that's going to come in and change your podcast and tell you you're doing it all wrong and we need to restructure the whole thing. I'm the guy that's going to say, have you thought about this and that and the other thing? And 9 times out of 10, they'll say, I never even considered it. And so when we do, it just naturally tightens up your content and makes it even stronger and more meaningful to your audience. It makes a stronger connection.
Yeah, there's a couple of great points in there that I want to explore a little bit more, but that's certainly a powerful change. And the ability to ask the right questions, I think, is a gift that few people have. And a lot of consultants come in and give advice rather than ask questions.
Exactly. And so many gurus say, hey, you need to go out and define your target audience. Who are you talking to? Because if you want your marketing message to really connect, you need to figure out who you're talking to. And I was talking to some clients the other day in my coaching sessions, and I said, all right, well, we need to start by defining your target audience. Who are you targeting? And they said, well, we're targeting online marketers. I go, okay, well, there's quite a few of them, so we're going to need to narrow that down a little bit. And well, and we start with the basics. Are they male or female? Well, they're both. I go, well, they can't be both, because men and women process information differently. And you have to understand which one you're trying to communicate with. Otherwise, your marketing message falls flat. And a lot of gurus say, go define your target audience. That's where you have to start. Who are you targeting? And they stop at, I'm targeting online marketers. And that's it. Right. Or they may say, I'm targeting online marketers who like to do Facebook ads. And that's not enough. That's not enough to make a connection with those people. And so we get into there's probably, if you go to Podcast Talent Coach and you get my ideal listener development worksheet, there's probably 15 or 20 questions on there that just start to scratch the surface to really define your target audience. Because if you're creating your message in your podcast, you really want to connect with your audience. You need to shape your content differently. If you're talking to a 25-year-old mom who's running a tutoring business off her dining room table, and she's tutoring kids one-on-one, much differently than you're going to shape your content to target a 54-year-old male who is running a 150-person call center. The message has to be completely different. You might be targeting small business owners, and both the 25-year-old mom who's a tutor running a small business is a small business owner, and the guy that's 54 and running a 150-person call center is also a small business, but they have much different needs. They have much different wants, much different fears and desires. They have much different customers and clients. Everything's different. And the marketing message that you need to use to reach those people also needs to be different. So stopping at, I target small business owners, isn't nearly enough.
Now, I'd just like to emphasize to those people that are regular listeners of this show that I didn't pay you to say any of that, right?
No, not whatsoever. Smart marketers know that. I mean, smart marketers, even if you are an automobile manufacturer and you manufacture SUVs, family trucksters, that can haul the family around, and you're going to target those to moms who want to keep their kids safe. That's a completely different marketing message than the marketing message you're going to construct for the pickup truck for the guy who uses it on the job site to haul around a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, they're two different marketing messages, but they're coming from the same company. So you may target two different segments, but you have to have two different marketing messages for each segment.
That's right. That's a great analogy. And I think because we really dig into the ideal target audience thing and ideal client in a really deep way, much more than the superficial way that you kind of described right at the beginning. But I'm intrigued that you actually differentiate on gender to start with. And in some ways, I've been avoiding that. But at the same time, there's no reason why you can't have two different ideal listener profiles.
I would agree. Because let's say you want to target both men and women on your show. It's going to be difficult to create content for both men and women. It's easier to do if you have multiple hosts, because one can take the perspective of the male and one can take the perspective of the female. And you can shape your content, your responses, and your thoughts and opinions based on that. But the reason I start with men and women, and it gets me in trouble a lot, I got to tell you, every time I talk about this, I start getting hate mail, that women are just as strong as men. And I get that. That's not what I'm saying at all. The female gender is absolutely, if not stronger than the male gender. And I truly appreciate everything they do, but it's genetics. And if you look at the way that men and women process information, it's very different. And I use a lot of generalities and I make a lot of assumptions, and that's usually what gets me in trouble, because they're generalities. They're not set in stone. They don't hold for everybody, but for the most part, that's what they do. I have a video at podcasttalentcoach.com. That's the differences between men and women, between marketing to men and women. It's about a half-hour long video, and it gets some people angry when they watch it because I go through the differences. When women are making a buying decision for the household, they typically think spatially. They think, how will it affect the people in the house? Like, let's just use the example of buying an automobile. When a female is typically considering an automobile, they're thinking, how will it protect my family? Will it fit everybody in the family? How will it compare to the neighbors? What will they think? How will it look? Will it affect, will it carry all of little Jimmy's sports equipment? Will it carry the upright bass that my daughter plays? Will it do all of the things we need it to do? And how does it affect everybody? It's very spatial. When a male is going to buy an automobile, he just wants to get the job done. I need a vehicle that I can use for work that will haul all of my junk. I need a truck. Who's got the best truck? How much is it? Let's buy it. And you can see that when you watch television and you see automobile advertisements. When it's a family vehicle, when it's an SUV or a van, something like that, targeted toward a female, it will talk about all the safety features, and it will talk about all the comfortable seats, and how it has the flip down videos for the kids in the back, and you'll see it pulling into the driveway, and the neighbors are like, "Ooh, look, the Joneses got a new vehicle," and it's all of this relational sort of stuff. But when you see a advertisement targeted specifically for men, like a pickup truck, it's talking about the torque, and it's talking about the payload capacity, and it's talking about it can climb up mountains and haul a bunch of rocks you'll never haul in your lifetime, and all of this. It's talking about getting from A to B and getting the job done. It's very linear and very task oriented, where a female targeted advertisement is usually relational and spatial.
Yeah, that's an interesting comparison with the cars. And if you think of, like, I'm trying to think of some of the car ads that I've seen on TV recently, and a lot of them at the moment that I recall, at least, these are the ones that have made an impression on me, are adventure focused. So they might, they'll have a bike on top and going into bush, or they'll have a canoe on top, and then you'll see people doing the canoeing. So what do you think the target audience for them is? Is that gender specific, or is that more kind of the younger?
It's probably male oriented because it's very adventuresome.
It is task focused, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's here's the vehicle. It can haul your bike. It can get you out into the bush. It can get you where you want to go, and you're seeing it. So you're obviously
that's right. I'm
the
paying
target,
attention.
and you're probably watching football, or you're probably watching some sort of male targeted television show when you see the ad.
True.
You're watching the news, or you're watching something, and that's where they come up.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. I guess, I've been doing a lot of NLP studies, and there's a concept in NLP around masculine and feminine energy, and it sort of less related to gender in the way the genetics are, or the genetics are, but more around thinking and processing of information. So that's probably speaking to this particular topic, isn't it?
There are so many layers to gender specific issues that we only scratch the surface. And in that video that I have online, we only scratch the surface there. I mean, that's why there are books like Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus are written,
right,
because there are genetic differences between men and women, the way we handle that. Think of the last argument you got in with the opposite sex, right? So I'm sitting in the living room, right? I'm in the Lazy Boy, my favorite sporting event's coming on. I got my drink of choice, got my chips and my snacks and everything, and I'm ready to go. Got the remote in my hand. Game's about ready to start, and my wife comes in and she gives me that look, that.
Yeah. I've got a job for you.
And I looked at her and I'm like,
now.
right. And, kind of, I said, what's wrong? She goes, nothing. And I go, no, you're not here because nothing's wrong. What's going on?
Yeah.
And she goes, well, we never go out anymore. And I go, what do you mean we never go out anymore? Like, yeah, we do. She goes, no, we don't. I said, yeah, look, we just went to your cousin's wedding last weekend. We go out. And she goes, that's not what I'm talking about. And I go, what are you talking about? She goes, never mind. You wouldn't even understand. And I go, no, wait a minute. Like, well, hold on a second. And the fact is that it's not that we don't go out, and it's not that she wants me to solve the problem. When she comes in and she gets mad at me, I'm here to solve the problem. Fine, let's go out Tuesday. We'll go out. Let's go out Saturday. We'll go to dinner and a movie. That's not what I mean, because she doesn't want the problem solved. She's not looking for, fine, let's go out Saturday. Problem solved. We're good. Back to the game, right? That's my thinking. I'm linear. Like, we got a problem. We get to solve it. We're done. She doesn't mean we don't go out anymore. What she means is we don't spend quality time together. We're losing the connection that we have. We're not spending good time. It's not that we don't go out. It's that I'm not thinking enough of her to actually make the plans to go out. That's what means the most to her. It's relational. With me, it's linear. Like, we have a problem. I take steps A, B, and C. The problem solved. We're done. On to the next problem. She, on the other hand, is like, no, it's bigger than the problem. It's the relationship. That's what she's concerned with. It's when she says, you need to put your clothes away. You need to clean off the kitchen table. You need to get all that crap out of the front room. I'm like, wait a minute. Which one do you want me to do? Like, I need one. Because I'm the guy that we start task A, we finish it, then we move on to task B. Where she is like, no, the house just needs to be cleaned up. Right? Your clothes need to be put away. The front room needs to be picked up, clean off the kitchen table. It all has to do with the same relational problem. So women think very globally, spatially, and take everybody else into account. Men just want to get the job done. Now, it's very, like I said, it's very assumptive, making generalities, but for the most part, it holds true. You think of the last argument you were in. It probably went very much like I just described.
Yeah. So that's a great story analogy, and I know that storytelling is something that you make a lot of reference to in your videos and in your training. So tell us about the importance of storytelling and what makes a great story in terms of getting the point across.
People learn through stories, and they have for ages. I mean, that is the way that teachings were passed down from generation to generation as far back as man existed. And not only that, stories are powerful because they put the listener in the moment. If I'm telling a story about about you and I, and we were out taking a hike, and we ended up in this kind of small forest of trees, and we were going down this path, and the further we went, the darker it got. And it wasn't hot out, but the further we got into the dark, the cooler it got, and you could almost feel like the mist just kind of envelop you and kind of take you in. And it started to getting a little chillier as it got a little darker within the trees, and all of a sudden we started hearing some rustling up the hill to our left there, and we couldn't quite figure out what it was. And it really starts to put you in that moment. Like, you can almost taste the wet leaves we're walking on and that sort of thing. It's the theater of the mind. And that's what makes audio powerful. The reason stories are so powerful in audio, even more so than video, is you imagine the story in your mind in the way that it suits you best. Where is that forest? I don't know. My forest is going to be different than your forest, because your forest in your mind is the way you want it to be. It's the way it makes the story the most powerful. Was it nighttime or daytime? Was it morning or afternoon? Was it a clear sky or a cloudy sky? I don't know. We didn't get into any of that. But you're going to envision it the way that it's best for you. When you and I are watching a movie, we see exactly what the director wanted us to see. We're going to see the red car. It's going to be the same red car you see as the same red car that I see. In our mind, in the theater of the mind, it's our favorite red car. It might be a cherry red 1968 Ford Mustang for me, but it may be a Lamborghini for you. Whatever makes the most powerful image in your mind, that's what you're going to imagine. And that's why I love the theater of the mind so much. And that's why I love stories. Plus, stories are memorable. When you tell a story, people will remember it. And the third reason I love stories is that it's unique to you. The way that you interpret a story, the way that you tell a story, and what the story means to you will be unique to you, and nobody else can copy it. If somebody on another podcast tells the same story that you tell, it's going to be different because they're going to include different details, different elements, different inflectuations. I mean, the whole story is going to be different. Even though it's the same story, they're not seeing it through your lens. So your stories will be unique to you. If you want your podcast to stand out in the sea of sameness against everybody else, tell your stories.
That's fantastic advice. And you do so well, like you had me in the forest there for a moment, and I started shivering when you talked about getting colder. So it's a great gift to actually develop. So how did you, when you first started, how did you build that gift or build that talent to be so descriptive and build the picture, if you like, with words?
It came about over time. I really developed my ability to tell stories over a long period of time, working with a lot of different radio coaches. They all had a little different approach to storytelling and a little different theory on the power of storytelling. And over years, I just kind of took a little bit of each of the advice and kind of put it together and really fine-tuned my craft. I worked with a talent coach. His name's Bill McMahon. He coaches morning shows for radio talent here in the United States. And he was probably most powerful for me. He would talk about starting your story with a provocative point. What do you want your audience to laugh at, marvel at, or better understand about your story? And then start there. Have you ever sat through a story? Somebody's telling a story and they're giving all these details about the story, and you're about, 2 minutes into the story, and you start looking at your watch like, man, where's he going with this? Is this
often
have a
get to the point? Get to the point.
Right. What Bill says with the provocative point, and which is what I try and teach my podcast talent coach students, is let's start with the provocative point. That's the headline. You tell them where we're going, and then you tell the story. So if I'm going to start into this whole story about you and I walking into the woods, I want to start with, the other day, last weekend, we just about got eaten by a bear. It was crazy. And then I start in the story. Now I start going down the path, and now it's starting to get colder, and it's starting to get darker, and the leaves are cricking, and all of a sudden we hear this noise up on the left. Where we're going. Sooner or later, a bear is going to show up in this story, right?
Yeah.
So you can enjoy the details and the fine elements of the story as we're going along, and it creates that anticipation of, holy cow, when's the bear going to show up? Had I just started with you and I wandering into a forest and hadn't mentioned anything about the bear, you're not going to enjoy the details of the story. You're going to sit here and wonder, does Erik even have a point to this story? Like, where are we going? Who cares that there were leaves crickling under your feet and that it was getting colder? What does this have to do with anything? So the provocative point that you give, the headline, the where we're going, that's almost like the headline of your blog post. So when you read a story in a magazine or a newspaper, you read the headline, you kind of have an idea what the story's about. And then you start reading the story thinking, okay, sooner or later, the bear's going to show up. You know that when you're reading. But when we tell stories, we don't always do that. And I think it does a disservice to our audience because they're left wondering where we're going. It would be like you and I walking up to the car and I say, hey, get in, we're going to go for a ride. And you're like, going where? Like, oh, you'll see. This is going to be great. And you're like, I got an appointment in like 2 hours. So like, when are we going to be back? Where are we going? How long is this going to take? Do I need to pack a bag? Like, what's happening here? But if I say, hey, I have this really sweet 1967 Ford Mustang that's for sale. It's 2 blocks over. I just want to drive you by it because I think you're going to love it. Hop in. Let's go check it out. And then now you know where we're going. And now on the way over there, I can tell you all about it and how sweet it is, and that it just went up for sale today, and that, it's got these great rims on it, and it's perfect, in every way. It's got a black interior, and he just washed it and waxed it, and it looks, now you can enjoy the story. You can enjoy the journey, the 2-block drive we're going to take to go see the car. You can feel the anticipation building. If I just said, get in, let's go, you're going to think I'm crazy and wonder where we're going for 2 blocks until we get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a couple of really great points there, and some wonderful examples. I love how you bring story in to do the example as well. You also talk about the importance of telling your own story on a couple of the podcasts that I listen to. So why is that important?
Your story is what makes you stand out from everybody else. I mean, you are uniquely you. Nobody else is going to be you. So if you're doing a marketing podcast and 750 other people are also doing marketing podcasts, how are you going to stand out against everybody else? What's going to make you different? Are you going to tell me how to do great marketing in 4 steps instead of 5? You have to figure out your point of differentiation, and your point of differentiation is your story. Where'd you come from? What are you all about? How did you learn this stuff? What made you who you are? Who were your important influences? That's why your story is important, because your story is unique to you. Nobody can copy your story. You can be doing the same topic, same information, but your filter, your story is unique to you, and nobody else will be able to copy that.
And how do you suggest that people go about that in terms of not making it about them, but making it about their audience? How is it relevant to the audience?
Your story kind of shapes your philosophy. Your story shapes your approach to the subject matter. So the reason that I love entrepreneurship, the reason I love radio and architecture and podcasting is the fact that I was raised by a single mom who was very entrepreneurial. She was a waitress at night. She made wedding cakes on our kitchen table during the day. And she always had a little side hustle going, and I loved it. And all of her brothers and sisters all owned businesses. I grew up around that. And I never thought, someday I'm gonna be an entrepreneur. I just thought someday I'm gonna grow up and I'm gonna own my own business, because that's what I do. That's what my uncles do. That's what my aunts do. That's what everybody does. And so from the time I got into architecture, I didn't go into architecture to be an architect. I went into architecture to own an architectural firm. That was my job. That was what I was going to do. I was going to grow up. I was going to be an architect. I was going to get licensed. I was going to hang out my shingle, and I was going to be an architect and own my own firm, because that's what we did. That was kind of how it ran in my family. My uncle owned a jewelry store. My aunt owned a craft store. My other uncle owned a handyman shop. My other aunt owned a restaurant. We own businesses. That's what we do. And we weren't entrepreneurs. We just owned businesses. Like, you just own your business. That's kind of the deal. And so that's part of my story of how I got to where I am now. And then I get into radio, and radio is all owned by big companies now. When I got into radio, it was all mom and pop shops. Like, there was a real potential of me owning a radio station when I got into it. And then all of a sudden it started getting all gobbled up by big companies, and that kind of went by the wayside. But I was getting big in radio, and my programming chops were really getting honed. And so I've stayed in it. Then podcasting came about, and that was my opportunity to own my own business and do what I love to do. It all kind of came together. Everything kind of shaped to where I am. So I'm talking podcasting. And how many other podcast coaches are out there? There's Dave Jackson, and there's a bunch of others. I'm good buds with most of them. But my differentiation is that I came up through radio. I have 30 years experience of being on the radio. Like, I'm not the guy that's going to fix your RSS feed for you. I'm not the guy that's going to tell you, why your website isn't syncing up with your Libsyn account. I don't know anything about that. That's not me. I'm the guy that's going to take your content and help you shape it so you can create a relationship with your audience. Those other guys, they're gonna help you get your podcast up and running. And then when you're 10 episodes in and you go, okay, now what? That's where I come in. Now I'm the guy that takes the now what, and now let's really make it powerful. Let's figure out how we use your podcast to shape the marketing message for your business. Let's make your podcast a true resource of information. So it's like an infomercial on steroids, where the infomercial is actually something people want to watch because you're giving them great content and you're selling yourself and what you do, and people love you for that, and then they do business with you. It's a way to create that know, like, and trust factor through your authority in order to get people to do business with you. It's just creating a relationship. When people love Apple, they don't feel like they're doing business with Apple. They're an Apple fan. Like, I can't wait to get my hands on a new MacBook. Like, that's, but when people are doing business with Microsoft, they feel like they're doing business. Like, there's no relationship there to Microsoft. They're not like, oh, I can't wait till Windows 14 comes out or whatever they're on. It's like there's no relationship there.
I haven't seen a queue twice around the block outside the Microsoft store when there's a product announced, but that's what happens at the Apple store. Yeah.
Right. So it's not let's create your podcast so it's this big Weasley marketing message. It's let's create your podcast so we can create relationships with our audience so they like us and they know us and they trust us. And then when we happen to have something to sell, if it fits their need and solves their problem, then we can do business together. I offer my coaching clients, I offer them a strategy call. It's a free podcast strategy call. So we get on the phone for half hour to an hour, depending on how long it takes. And we just talk about their podcast. What are your goals? Where do you want to go with it? What are you trying to do with it? And let's figure out where you are. And then let's figure out how to create a bridge from where you are to where you want to go. And that's free. We do that. I do that just so I can get to know podcasters. And I also do it so they can get to know me. And then at the end of the call, we decide if we want to work together. Am I a good fit for them? Are they a good fit for me? Am I going to actually be able to help them get where they want to go? And sometimes it doesn't work. It's your podcast is too young, or your goals aren't really in line to where I can help you get there, or the information you get on the hour-long call is enough and you're on your way. It's like, if you do these things, you're going to get, I was on a call the other night with a gentleman. He does a podcast where he just interviews really cool people from South Asian descent. They could be living in Canada. They could be living in South Asia. They could be living in New York City. Doesn't matter. If they're South Asian and they're doing cool things, he interviews them. So there's really no business behind it. He just wants to grow his listenership from 300 to 1,000 over the next year. And so we got on, we brainstormed a few ideas. I listened to a show. I gave him some ideas on how to improve his interviewing skills. And he went on his way. Like, no harm, no foul. Hey, great meeting you. Talk to you later. And we were done. Yeah. But then there are others who get on and say, you know what? I have a business. I'm an author. I'm a speaker. I really want to use this to build my authority so I can leverage and get in more speaking gigs. And we take the storytelling from that podcast and we shape that, or the interviewing aspect, or the authority building, whatever it happens to be. I'm working with a gentleman from Australia now, and he is a corporate speaker, and he's really trying to figure out how to shape the content that he delivers on his podcast so it's not as dense and thick and rich, and it's more entertaining. And so we've done that over the past probably 4 months that we've been working together. We've shaped it. He's now got 6 speaking gigs just from his podcast, because we've shaped it and we've made it more entertaining. So when we do that call, we just decide, are we a good fit for each other, and can we work together? And sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. But that's what makes me different from all of the other podcast coaches. And that's what makes Dave Jackson and I such a great pair, because Dave has this great teaching background. He's very he's very, I don't know how to put it other than he's very nice to people. Like Dave is a teacher. He's a teacher at heart. And he's got a very solid technical background. When I have technical questions, I go to Dave because it would take me 3 days to figure it out. And Dave just goes, do this, do that, and do that, and you're done. And I go, thank you, Dave. And we're done. And I'm more of on a disc profile, I'm more D. Like here's what we need to do. Let's go get it done kind of guy. And sometimes I have to have a little more patience with people. And so when Dave and I do the podcast review show, Dave is usually the kind of guy that's giving a lot of hugs, and I'm usually the kind of guy that's going, that was not good at all. Like we need to kind of revamp that a little bit. But we complement each other great, and I love doing the show with him.
Yeah, on the podcast review show, I really like that concept because there's so much you can learn as a podcaster from that just by listening in to other ones, and the lessons are applicable to other podcasters. It's not just the podcast you're actually dissecting at the time.
And a lot of people are scared to come on because they think, oh, you're going to call my baby ugly, and that's kind of like working with me. Like, I'm going to take your show. I'm not going to tell you how ugly your show is or what you're doing wrong. Our goal on the podcast review show, and my goal personally when I coach people, is to help you find the things you're doing really, really well. And let's do more of that. Because if you do the stuff you're doing well more often, it will naturally push out the stuff you're not doing so well.
Yeah.
So it's just, if you and I were talking about about your show and how to improve it, and I just sat here and said, stop doing this, stop doing that, don't do that anymore, and stop doing this, there's not going to be anything left on your show. Like I just made you stop doing everything. And so now,
it's that bad, is it?
Right. So now all of a sudden you listen to the show and it's like 5 minutes long because we've taken everything out. So we need to find things you do really, really well and the things you love and enjoy talking about. And let's do more of that. And that creates a richer, thicker, more entertaining show.
Yeah, and you've mentioned entertaining a couple of times. So I think there's kind of two things that I think are really important around the know, like, trust and building that relationship is educating people on whatever topic it is that they're there to learn about, but in a way that's actually entertaining as well.
There's only one reason people listen to podcasts. Only one. That reason is companionship. It doesn't matter if you're teaching or debating or educating or entertaining through comedy. The only reason they've turned on a podcast is because they don't want to be alone. I'm driving in my car by myself. There's a reason I have a podcast on, or there's a reason I have a radio on, or a CD in, or anything. It's because I don't want to sit there in silence and be by myself. Yeah. When I'm out mowing the yard, there's a reason I'm listening to a podcast, because I don't want to sit out there on the mower mowing the yard by myself. I don't want to be alone. I want to, when I'm jogging, there's a reason that people jog, they have earbuds in. They don't want to jog by themselves. Serious runners, like marathoners, they'll jog with nothing in because they're so focused on what they're doing. But the average exercise guy who's just out for a run usually is listening to something so they don't have to run by themselves. And if it's not entertaining, it's not companionship. The relationship that you build through your podcast is all about friendships. And you become friends with people the more you know about them. Think of your best friend. How much do you know about your best friend? You know everything. Because they've told you all these stories about the time they were in college, or the time they were 6 and they threw the cat in the shower with their sister, or all of these great stories that they've told you from the past, and you feel like you know them, like you know everything about them because they're your best friend. And that is the biggest compliment you can get from a listener. When you meet them in person and they say, "Man, I feel like I know you, like we've been friends forever." Because you've told them all these great stories about yourself on your podcast, and that companionship, that relationship, that friendship has formed over time. And it only does that when you share things about yourself on your podcast.
Great advice, yeah. And certainly, I mean, I've had that experience, and I've had that experience happen to me, and I've also experienced it from the other side. So I've met people and say, oh, yeah, I feel like I know you. So that is a very powerful thing.
We were at the hockey game one time. I'm the public address announcer for our local hockey team. And so after the game, my wife and I and my kids were walking down the concourse of the arena. And coming our way is another couple. And they stop. Hey, EJ, what's going on? And I'm like, hey, how are you guys? And they're like, we are awesome. How you been? How's the family? You know, what are you doing for Christmas? Yada, yada, yada. And so we chit chat for a little while. And all right, good to see you. And they walk away, and my wife gets mad. I'm like, what's wrong? She goes, how come? Right, exactly. How come you didn't introduce me?
Yeah.
And I go, because I have no idea who those people are. Like, I don't know. They either listen to me on the radio, or they think they know me because I'm here at the hockey game every game announcing. I'm in their ear the whole game for 3 hours. Like, they think they know me, but I have no idea who they are. Like, I don't know. I don't know them from Adam. Like, it's just, and now she introduces herself now because she knows I don't know these people. Yeah. And so to make me like, who are you again? She'll introduce herself, and they'll say, oh, hi, I'm Rick, and this is Bonnie. And, you know, and then I'm like, oh yeah, Rick and Bonnie. Okay. Yeah, that's
a great story too. Yeah, this is fabulous, Erik. I could keep going for ages, but I'm aware of the time, so I think it's time we moved on to the buzz, which is our innovation round. Now, I'm sure you've probably answered all of the questions, but we'll kind of recap them very briefly, if you would. That would be awesome. So I've got 5 questions, and hopefully you'll give us an answer that will inspire people to go away and do something awesome today.
Okay.
So what's the number one thing anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
To be more innovative, you just have to try new things. It's scary. And you're always afraid of failure, and you'll fail, but that's okay. That's how you learn. If I tell my kids, if you're not failing, you're not stretching yourself, and you're not growing, and you're never going to learn. You know, people ask me, they go, Erik, how can you get on stage in front of 17,000 people at a concert and introduce Taylor Swift? Like, I would wet myself having to do that. Like, and I go, what's the worst that could happen? Like, you get on stage and you make a fool of yourself. Like, you know, are people going to hate me forever if that happens? It's, you know, everybody's made a fool of themselves once in a while. Yeah, you just learn to laugh at yourself and move on the next day. You know, people aren't even you're going to remember it a lot more than anybody else. What I've realized is when I go out, like at the hockey games, I have to go on the ice and I have to announce in front of 4,000 people every night when I'm on the ice. And what I've realized is that of the 4,000 people, there's probably 200 that are actually listening to what I'm saying. And then the rest of them are all talking amongst each other. So if I make a fool of myself, nobody's going to remember it a week later, you know, and if they do, at least they're remembering me. So try new things. If you want to be innovative, you just got to try stuff. Sometimes it'll work. Sometimes it won't. You try things, you regroup, you make some adjustments, and you try some more stuff. And sooner or later, good things will happen.
Yeah, that's great advice. And one of my favorite quotes is from Joseph Campbell, who, and it goes something like, in the cave you fear to enter is the treasure that you seek, which is kind of, you know, stretch yourself outside your comfort zone and try those new things. Yeah,
great quote.
Yeah. All right. What's the best thing you've done to develop new ideas?
Same thing. Try new stuff. You know, the way that I find new ideas is I expand outside of my circle, and I try and consume content, whether that's a documentary or a television show or an article or just conversations that I have with people outside of my circle in different industries and businesses and walks of life. And I try and figure out what they're doing that makes them successful in their walk of life and how I might be able to do that within my own business or my own life or my own family or my relationships. I just try new things and try to adapt them to what I need them to do.
That's great advice. I really like that. And there's so much you can learn. And But it does take a certain mindset, right, to kind of look at what's the principle behind what they're doing and how can I apply that in my particular area or niche.
Yeah, very much so.
All right. Do you have a favorite tool or system for improving your productivity and allowing you to be more innovative?
I'm an old school guy, and this is one of the reasons I got out of architecture. I love having a pen in my hand and paper in front of me. I'm a very visual idea guy in that way. I kind of have to sketch it on paper and see it and have a diagram or a list or a to-do sort of thing, make it visual. And so architecture, when I was getting my degree, architecture really started moving away from pen and paper, sketch, bumwad, straight edge to computer aided drafting. Yeah. And you were doing all of your designs and your drawings on a computer. And it lost the romance for me because I love being able to touch it and feel it and hold it and crump it up and, tape over it and all kinds of really fun stuff. And I think that's part of what drove me away from architecture was almost too much technology. So I'm a spreadsheet kind of guy. I love using an Excel spreadsheet. I plug a lot of stuff in there. When I create my content, I have a content creation planner that I've developed in Excel. So it lists my episode numbers and my call to action for that particular episode, what the subject matter is going to be, how I'm going to address it, what shape it's going to take on the episode, and then what I might offer in that particular episode. And then I develop the headline for it, like the title of the episode. And then once I have that done, then I start creating the episode. I grab a piece of paper and I just start creating sort of an outline of the content. And the headline will ebb and flow over time. Usually the headline I start with isn't the headline I finish with. Because once I start getting the ideas out of my head onto paper, the content kind of takes shape that way. So I really don't have a tool that I use other than the notebook I carry around with me all the time for ideas. And that's the best part about being a podcaster. One of the biggest tips I have is have a little note-taking device with you all the time because you'll never know where that next idea is coming from. So whether you're writing it down in a notebook or you're keeping it in Evernote or you're using just the notes thing on your iPhone, whatever you have, take notes because ideas will pop in your head. I was watching a webinar today that had nothing to do with podcasting or anything else. And they were talking about different lead magnets. And I was taking all of these lead magnet ideas and turning them into topics for my podcast. And I'm just writing as fast as I can because I'm just going to repurpose their ideas for my show. But so always have something to jot your ideas on because sometimes ideas won't go anywhere, but other times they'll be gold. And by the time it comes time to record your show, you're not going to remember the topic you wanted to cover.
That's such great advice. And I also do, because I'm a keen photographer, so I also take pictures of things that help trigger my memory when I think of an idea. Now, often I get ideas when I'm out on the bike alone. So I was out on the bike alone this morning and I had about 3 really good ideas and I didn't stop to write anything down. And so I'm reciting things to myself. So writing down is actually a better way because when I then got home, of course, I was greeted by my pets and I had to deal with them. And then my wife came and said, how was it? And wanted to have a conversation. And I'm like, leave me alone. I need to go and write something down.
Yeah, you need like a little voice recorder or whatever you have to get those notes down immediately because they come especially when you're in the shower or when you're out riding a bike or you're on the lawnmower, whenever you're by yourself with your thoughts, that's when the great ideas are going to come. And it's usually when you don't have a notepad in your pocket.
That's right. All right. Now, what's the best way to keep a client on track?
When I coach clients, I try not to give them a ton of things to do because I want them to be successful at the things I do give them. So each week at the end of our call, I create 2 or 3 action items for them for the week. And they come from the call. It's not like, all right, here's what I want you to do. We have a call and we determine what the next steps are to reach their goal. And then I say, okay, here are the 2 or 3 things that you need to accomplish this week in order to get us closer to that goal. And they're usually fairly easy. They're focused and on task, because I don't want them to say, oh, I didn't get those 3 things done because I was working on these 3 things. I want them to have enough time to execute the 2 or 3 things that we decide on over the next week. And then I put those in a recap, and I also send those to them then a couple days later, and I say, hey, don't forget, here are the 2 or 3 things we're working on this week. And then on the following call, that's where we start. All right, this week we were working on these 2 or 3 things. Where are we? How do we come along with them? And it's just accountability.
Yeah, and that's a great system. I really love that. And it's something that I've got a version of that we use internally to keep myself on track and keep my team on track. So it's good to use internally as well, I think.
Yeah, if you don't have your steps written out and you're not following them, if you're trying to do 17 things at one time, you're not going to accomplish anything. Like the old Chinese proverb says, he who chases 2 rabbits catches none.
So
yeah. You have to figure out what's the next important step to take to reach your goal. Do that, and then we can move on to the next step.
Yeah, I'm reminded of the piano teacher of our children who, when they were learning these massive piano concertos that went for 30 minutes or so, she said, it's like eating pizza, 1 piece at a time.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. All right, and we've talked about this one, but maybe you can recap. What's the number one thing anyone can do to differentiate themselves?
Oh, yeah, we talked quite a bit about that. That's to tell your story. If you want to stand out in the sea of sameness, figure out what makes you different from everybody else. And that's your story. It's your background. It's what makes you you. And start there and frame your entire mission statement around who you are, and then turn it around and focus on your audience. So if the way that I use my superpower of 30 years in radio and being the ideal content guy is I turn it around and I help podcasters take their information and turn it into entertainment, because I want to help them create those relationships with your audience. If you remember, the only reason people listen to your show is for companionship. We have to create relationships, and all the data in the world isn't going to create a relationship with anybody. You have to be entertaining. You have to be a storyteller, and you have to reveal things about yourself on your show to turn your relationship into a friendship. And that's how you get people to come back each and every week to listen to your show.
Great advice. All right. Well, thanks, Eric. This has been absolutely fantastic. I've just made a little note to myself here to make sure to listen back to this as soon as we're done, because it's been so great. Where can people reach out?
Has flown by. It's been great. Yeah. I love chatting with you.
Yeah. Where can people reach out and say thank you? Is podcasttalentcoach.com the best place?
Yes, definitely. If you head over to podcasttalentcoach.com, I have a whole library of worksheets that will help you regardless of where you are in your podcast journey. If you're just starting, even if you need to go back and revisit your ideal target listener, I would recommend you start there just to make sure that's fine-tuned, because that's the foundation for your show. And then there are about a dozen different worksheets in the Podcast Talent Coach worksheet library. There's one there right on the front page that will allow you. It's the 17 most powerful podcast interview questions ever. They are questions I've developed over my 30 years in radio, interviewing other people, and they're customizable. So you can take the question and you can customize it to whatever guest you're talking to. So the questions aren't the same every single episode. And there are videos there and information on my coaching and all sorts of great stuff. It's all at podcasttalentcoach.com.
Yeah, and we'll post a link to that in the show notes. And I would encourage, even if you're not into podcasting, I'd encourage you to go and have a look at the information and the videos that Eric has there, because the principles apply to virtually any marketing.
Yeah, if you're marketing, if
any
you're a public
content.
speaker, it's basic principles that will help you in any sort of selling, marketing, speaking, any sort of business down that road. Basically, all business. Everybody's selling at some point in time. So,
yeah. All right. So I've got two more questions. First of all, what's the number one piece of advice you'd give to any business owner who wants to be a leader in innovation?
A business owner that wants to be a leader in innovation is to get outside of their own bubble. So many innovators try and just be better than the competition. In order to beat the competition, you need to be different. You can't be better. A different shade of gray never wins. So get out of your bubble. Go find ideas in other industries that you can adapt to your industry. And that is how you will be innovative. That's how you will be different. And that's how you will win.
All right. Great advice. I've just written that down. Finally, then, who would you like me to interview on a future InnovaBuzz podcast and why? So that's a sneaky double question.
Mm-hmm. Innovative podcast that I really love. There's so many great podcasters that I enjoy listening to. I would love to hear you talk to Harry Duran at Podcast Junkies, because I think Harry talks about podcasting, but Harry's the kind of guy that interviews people from all walks of life. And when it comes to interviewing and getting useful, innovative information that you can adapt to your industry, Harry does a great job. Harry does a great job at really pulling those little nuggets out of anybody that he's interviewing. The only requirement they have to be on Harry's show is to have a podcast, so he gets people from all walks of life. And the other one who has some fantastic nuggets is Oscar Trimboli over at the Deep Listening podcast. He teaches corporate executives who are typically high type A personalities and very dominant. He teaches them how to be better listeners and what to listen for and the 5 levels of listening. And that's a really cool podcast for guys like me who want to be the leader, who want to be the driver, who want to be the coach, who want to, everybody follow me. That's the problem that I've had in business over 30 years is I have a tendency to move too fast. Like I assume everybody knows what I know, and so let's go. And I don't spend enough time listening to understand where they are in the whole process so I can better explain the why behind the whole thing before we start running. I just say, let's go run. And Oscar does a great job not only teaching you how to listen, but why to listen and how it affects what you do in everyday life. That's Deep Listening with Oscar Trimboli.
All right, great. Thanks for those suggestions. So Harry Duran and Oscar Trimboli. Look out for an invitation from us to the InnovaBuzz podcast, courtesy of Erik Johnson.
Very good.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing your time and your insights with us on the InnovaBuzz podcast today. I've really enjoyed this immensely, and I've learnt a lot. And as I say, I'm going to go back and listen to this as soon as I've got it recorded, got the recording saved. So I wish you all the best for the future, and let's keep in touch. It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me. Wow, I don't know about you, but I'm still buzzing. I hope you enjoyed that delightful and thoroughly engaging conversation with Erik, and like me, learnt a lot. Erik weaved stories into nearly all his answers so effortlessly, and the stories really captured my attention and emphasised his message. I love the theatre of the mind idea, using your words to paint a picture that is meaningful to both you and me. Of course, there was so much more in the interview with Erik. I'd love to know what you took away from Erik's episode. Leave a comment below the blog post, which can be found at innovabiz.co/ErikKJ. That is ErikKJ. All lowercase, all one word, innovabiz.co/Erik KJ. You'll also find contact information for getting in touch with Erik there, as well as links to the Podcast Talent Coach website and the many resources that you'll find there. Erik suggested I interview Harry Duran of Podcast Junkies and also Oscar Trimboli of the Deep Listening podcast on future InnovaBuzz podcasts. So Harry and Oscar, keep an eye on your inboxes for an invitation from us to the InnovaBuzz podcast courtesy of Erik K. Johnson. Remember to visit innovabiz.co/VIP to access the Transformational Marketing Hub and all its free and exceptionally useful information to help you transform your marketing. Stay connected. Head on over to iTunes or Stitcher or Pocket Casts and subscribe to the InnovaBuzz podcast so you make sure you'll never miss another episode. We'd also love you to leave us a review because what you think matters. Take some of the ideas you've heard today and apply them in your business. Any thoughts, ideas, suggestions or questions, share them in the comments below the blog post. And remember, if you want to get better marketing results than you ever have, join our fantastic LinkedIn community at the Transformational Marketing Academy. All you have to do is go to innovabiz.co/TMAC. It's free to join. Hope to see you there soon. Until next time, I'm Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBiz. Remember to be awesome and keep innovating.